Greetings, everyone, and a special welcome to all of our City Biz viewers today. April is Financial Literacy Month, and so I'm especially happy to have Mike Bisaro, President and CEO of StraightLine, a registered investment advisory and financial planning firm based in Troy, Michigan, here with us today. Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm wonderful, Marie. Thanks for having me.
So you have earned your accredited investment fiduciary professional designation from the Center for Fiduciary Studies, which is associated with the University of Pittsburgh Center for Executive Education. And you've also been featured in D Magazine, is Our Detroit, and D Business Magazine because you have been for many years recognized as a five-star wealth manager. You've also been on CNBC.com and on the Today Show. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute because it's fascinating. So I'm curious to hear from you today, Mike. To get us started, we're just coming out of tax season and many people are still in the middle of getting their taxes prepared. But once we've got that done, what should we be thinking about financially for the rest of the year?
Yeah, thanks, Marie. It's a great time to ask that question. So many of us struggle with you're really keeping an eye on our finances in general. That when we are forced to do it through things like tax time, it's a great time to kind of use that attention to take it a little bit further. So the one thing that I really want to say to this is that I think one of the mistakes that people make and one of the things that prevent them from taking steps with financial planning is this idea that it has to be some big, comprehensive, overwhelming process. And one of the things that we really like to teach people is that you can really make a significant impact by doing little things or doing things in little pieces. And now I think is a great time to put those into play. We've actually done a series in the past called Improving Your Retirement 5 Minutes at a Time. And what it does is it's just something where we want to look at little reminders to just take time out of everybody's busy lives to take 5 minutes to think about one aspect of your financial journey. Maybe it's about your retirement savings. Sit down, think about your take-home pay, and ask yourself the question: can I increase my retirement savings in my 401k or 403b by 1 or 2%? And if the answer is yes at that moment, go in and actually do it at that moment. Because again, momentum in financial planning can be our greatest ally, but it can also be a bit of a hindrance to actually getting some of these things done. So little things like that, looking at your beneficiary designations in your account, which are so important and so easy to fix, but can cause so many problems if they are not correct. Thinking about right now, I think the one of the big things that's come up lately with interest rates rising is the amount of money that people have in regular savings accounts. Are there other options that might be able to produce a little bit more return, a little bit more interest for you? So again, I think that there are so many little aspects of this. But they're just so easy to overlook. How many of us have said, "Oh, I need to, I know I need that will, and I know, or maybe I need to talk about a trust," but you've been thinking about it for 16 years and you've never done that. Take those 5 minutes to call an estate attorney, set up an appointment. These things I think most people will find are not nearly as overwhelming once you get into them, but just getting over that initial barrier of starting that process can be the biggest barrier there is.
You're so right. And oftentimes it starts at the dinner table with your spouse or your kids, and you can have those conversations and then take action. I know I'm in the middle of that with my family right now. One of the things we're talking about is investments, not just beneficiary designations and all of that good stuff, wills and trusts, but investments. And with the different change in the market, how should we be talking with our financial advisor about that? So let's talk about the difference between speculation and investing. And that is what you appeared on the Today Show to talk about. So take us into that distinction.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. This is a question that's really near and dear to our hearts right now, and it's something that's come up again. Matter of fact, we did a blog post on this just last week because the biggest thing when it comes to speculation right now is probably cryptocurrency, Bitcoin in particular. And with the kind of the resurgence of the Bitcoin price, anytime things like this are moving around quickly, it brings up a lot of questions. And then there's the fear of missing out syndrome that drives a lot of these things as well. So, the when I was asked to make this appearance on the Today Show, it was about 2 years ago, and it was really during kind of the initial widespread cryptocurrency craze that was really punctuated by the Super Bowl 2 years ago, where there were, I think, about 768 different commercials for crypto, one way or another. So it was very much in people's minds at the time, and my role in that interview was to provide a little bit different type of perspective from some of the mania that was going on. And my point then, just as it is now, not just with cryptocurrency, but with really any similar types of investments, is that we simply don't know when you're talking about these kinds of assets. We don't know exactly what they are yet. We don't know how prevalent they're going to be. We don't know how governments and the IRS is going to react to some of these things. And so, so many people look at things like cryptocurrency and say, well, should I have it or should I not? Is it good or is it bad? I don't think it's a black and white issue. And the full context of what I believe about this is that until we know, and we may never know precisely what this is going to be, it has to be viewed as speculative. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with speculation when it comes to investments, as long as you know that you are speculating and that you are speculating with dollars that you can afford to consider speculative. So we look at speculation, whether it's crypto or anything else, we look at that as we do any other investment, as a piece of the overall investment portfolio. Some people won't do it at all, and that's okay. But for those that want to, there can be a place for it, provided that you look at it in the right context. So obviously, on something like the Today Show, the 40 minutes of talking that I did was boiled down to 30 or 40 seconds, and we knew that that was going to be the case. So it's difficult to get out a little bit more of this type of context. So I appreciate the opportunity to do it here. But ultimately, that's the message that we have, regardless of the asset, but cryptocurrency in general, or specifically, excuse me.
I remember a time when I was talking with our financial planner, and Bill, my husband, wanted to speculate a little bit. So we gave him his own little stash of money that he could just do whatever he wants. And I think he actually owns some cryptocurrency. I better find out about that.
There's a lot of them out there, and I don't know how many there are at this exact moment. I know it's not as many as there were 2 years ago, but there were 17,000 in circulation at that time. I believe the number is less now. But when it comes to these things, many of them many of them will never have any utility. Some of them will. Some we don't know who those winners and losers will necessarily be. But so much of speculation comes from, some of it comes from true believers, but so much of speculation comes from people who want to invest in something just because they think someone else will pay more for it later. And that's when speculation can get dangerous, because those are the types of trends that can reverse very quickly. So it's okay as long as it's, again, in the right context.
So these are the kinds of conversations that you and your team have day in and day out at StraightLine. Tell us a little bit more about what you do for your clients at StraightLine.
Yes. So StraightLine has been around as an independent firm, started as an independent firm, and has been around now for a little over 22 years. I've been here for just short of 20 of those years. And the real genesis of StraightLine was from what we saw at the time, or what was seen at the time as an unserved need, and it absolutely was. And somewhat surprisingly, it still is. And that is a focus on people's workplace retirement accounts, their 401ks, their 403bs. And what was true at that time, and is unfortunately still true today, is that most advisors are unable or unwilling to work with retirement accounts that are part of an employer-based plan. Whereas for the average American, that is their largest retirement investment, their largest financial investment in general, and for many, their only financial investment. So there are a lot of people out there that have a significant amount of money in here and or in those accounts, and they don't have any help. So we as advisors would sit, and people would bring their 401k statements, and we would say, oh, well, let's do this, this, and this. It was up to them to put it in place. Most people never did it. Again, the momentum problem, right? Most people would never do it. They'd come back a year later and they would show you the same statement. So StraightLine was really built to do that for them and to integrate the management of 401k and 403b style accounts into the overall portfolio of people's financial assets. So of course, as a firm, we are able to work with assets that are outside of retirement plan assets, and we do and have since our inception. But we were specifically built to work with assets that are part of active retirement plans, employer-sponsored retirement plans. So that little niche has led us in a lot of different directions over the years. And we've developed a couple of specialties in certain areas. Of course, we are headquartered in the Detroit area, so we certainly have worked with auto companies and suppliers and things in this industry. But over the years, we've developed a particular specialty in higher education, and that's why I mentioned 403Bs quite often, but higher education and the not-for-profit sectors. So there are some unique aspects to the financial plans in those spaces, and we have developed quite a bit of specialty around there. And for me personally, I have been a financial advisor since basically the day I got out of college. I was with a different firm for a few years right out of school. And as I mentioned, I've been at StraightLine now for just short of 20 years. Started as a financial advisor, and my role evolved over time to leading the financial advisory side of our firm. And then about 4 years ago, my wife and I had the opportunity to purchase StraightLine from the founders, which we did. And my wife is very involved in the business as well. She's our controller and is involved with a lot of the aspects behind the scene. So she and I have worked together to do a lot of things with the firm that we feel are helping it evolve into the next generation. But we've been very fortunate. We've had a very nice path of growth. We've had some nice accolades along the way. But ultimately, we have worked in a way that really has never lost sight of that core specialty that we have of helping people who often may not have access to traditional financial advisory help, not because they don't have needs, not because they don't have enough assets, but because their assets may be in a position that most advisors are not able to help directly.
So you're providing a lot of free resources on your website, one of which is your blog. And I was cruising through your blog and I noticed something that appealed to me, protecting your credit or your credit score by using credit freezes, because it's pretty scary to think if somebody got a hold of your bank account or some other passwords where you could be compromised. Would you talk a little bit about that blog post in particular and anything else that you'd like to just mention about the resources on your website?
Yeah, this is unfortunately something that just needs to be part of everyone's, financial planning, financial future, because the sad reality of our world today, with data flowing in so many different directions, is that information is out there. Probably everybody in the country seemingly has had at least one notice from whether it was a credit card provider or or any other place where data is exchanged. They've probably been notified that there's been some type of a breach where information was potentially exposed. And I think the sad reality is, for every one that we know about, there's probably many others behind the scenes that we don't know about. So we know that our information is out there despite all of our best efforts. And I know most people are pretty vigilant about that and very aware of these things in the obvious ways. But keeping an eye on that is an incredibly important part of everyone's financial journey. And the resources, fortunately in this case, the resources that are available in this area have really grown exponentially as well. But you have to do it, right? And this is one of those 5-minute things that we can certainly talk about. But when there are breaches, when you are aware of them, whether you are, some people do this consistently and they have things like credit monitoring and alerts. Many banks now are providing these things as part of their service. But it is important, particularly when you are aware of some type of a breach, to use the credit freezes, to use the more advanced alerts and monitoring that are often offered as part of those notifications. Now, credit freezes are not a be-all, end-all solution. And yes, they can be a little bit annoying when you actually do need to go and do something legitimately on your own. You're looking to get a car loan or you're looking to get a new credit card. Yes, you may have to call the credit bureaus and actually remove these things temporarily. But they are a very powerful and very important tool to safeguarding your assets. And by the way, it's not just your assets, it's your kids, even if they're minors. And what is even more insidious and more unfortunate is it's often deceased family members where people can still get a hold of their information and use it to open credit that just creates a lot of problems going forward. So it is a very, very important aspect of finance nowadays, to keep a good eye on those things and to make sure that they are being tracked and monitored appropriately.
So that kind of ties into my next question, which is technology. And every good financial advisory firm like yours is going to have technology that helps them better serve their clients. So could you talk a little bit about any of the technology that you think would be interesting or important for our listeners to consider, how you get your work done and how you help your clients?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, technology is essential. Even though we are definitely in a people driven business that's based on talking, sometimes the phone is the best piece of technology that we have for those things. But I think when you're talking about technology in our industry, there's kind of two sides of it. There is the part that's visible to the folks that we work with, and those are essential things that are the data gathering systems, the account reporting and performance reporting systems that allow people to see their accounts, particularly if they have accounts in many locations. And again, with us, with the work that we do inside of retirement plans, our data systems have to integrate those things to the best degree possible so that people can see all of their financial assets, ideally in the same location, and track them and understand what they're doing and how they're behaving, how they're performing. The other important side, most important side, I think, to most people is the financial planning software that we've used many different ones over the years, but these tools have constantly evolved. We have recently made a switch in the provider that we use for these things, and the tools are so powerful now, and they're so intuitive. There was a time, and there's still many tools are still like this, where they were really just driven by math and direct algorithms that showed you, well, at X amount of rates of return, I'll end up here at a such and such of an age, and those are fine, and there's a place for those, but they're limited, right? So many of the modern tools can integrate the emotional aspects of money management, can talk about risk in real world ways that allow you to really kind of test the strategies that you have in place to say, okay, well, this is what I think is appropriate, but if it were to drop by this amount, am I comfortable with that? Would that be something that would be, likely to make where I would want to make a change? So I would say that for in terms of the visible tools, those are the most important and the most powerful for the folks that we work with. Now, in terms of truly servicing people, the tools that we use behind the scenes are just as important, even though they are often not visible. But the tools that we have, the contact record management systems that we use to organize everything that we are doing, and keep track of communications and to archive our communications, those are essential. I mean, we've been using those for basically our entire existence in one form or another. The tools like we are using today, Marie, the tools like Zoom and Teams and all of the different versions of it, this has become a huge part of what we're doing, particularly since the beginning of the pandemic. And I know I don't need to explain that to anybody. But the other tools that are critical are the research tools, the investment tools that we use behind the scenes for fund research and ultimate fund fund selection, stock, bond selection. All of those tools, which have become significantly more integrated, in some cases more expensive, in some cases a little less expensive, but those combined with the aggregators that are existing behind the scenes that allow us to be able to have quick access to information when people call in. All of these things combined with security, of course, getting back to our question from a second ago, but to do this in a secure arena that allows us not just access, but that type of guarantee of privacy. It's a never-ending process. When I say we've selected it, that by no means is that the end of the process. We are constantly reviewing and analyzing these tools to see if there are things that can make the experience better behind the scenes and directly.
So earlier you talked a little bit about working with people in higher ed, and on your website you say that serving those that serve others is an honor and a privilege at StraightLine. Is that what you mean, higher ed?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, it's not limited, of course, to higher ed or to the not-for-profit space, but because so much of our focus has been there over the last 15 or 16 years, it's definitely a core part of what we do. But I think that that's important and meaningful to everyone. What they're doing, what they are doing is important to themselves. Obviously, it's important to the world at large. But yes, that is absolutely where some of those ideas come from and where a lot of that language comes from. But at the end of it, if someone, I don't care what they're doing, I don't care where they live, I don't care what their job is, if someone is entrusting you with their assets and to guide their financial future, I know it almost sounds cliche, but it is a sacred thing to us. It is absolutely core to everything that we do and everything that we are as advisors and as people. And it allows us to really help people in a way that is deeply meaningful to them and has significant impacts on their lives. When you're talking to someone, and I have a lot of examples that I can give on this, but when you're talking to someone and they think that they have to work to a certain age because someone told them 30 years ago that unless they have X amount of dollars, they're not going to be able to retire. And you're able to show them that no, that number that they told you, 30 years ago really isn't required in your situation. And I have some fun stories about this and some very meaningful personal stories about this. But when you show someone that perhaps their retirement time frame doesn't need to be as what they thought, and you're giving them time that they didn't otherwise think they had. So it really is something that we can do as advisors and as people that has deep meaning for people, and it's really core to who we are.
Well, let's end with this. Thank you for that. Are there a couple of final tips or words of wisdom that you'd like to leave our City Biz audience with today?
Yes, I think that just to reiterate the point that I made at the very beginning, um, is to really try not to be overwhelmed by the financial planning process, and to know that doing this in little bite-sized pieces can make a significant difference to your life over time. And quite honestly, if you were to spend 5 minutes a month on this and you add that up over the course of a year, you will have spent far more time on this subject than the average person does over that year, even if they plan to sit down and do this, because we know we're all busy, and we have other things that often become more immediate priorities. So that is one thing. Excuse me. Don't be overwhelmed by the process, and know that you can make a significant difference by doing little pieces. And secondly, and I realize this may sound a bit self-serving, but whether it's StraightLine or any other firm out there, if you are not comfortable doing this on your own, talk to an advisor. You can, or at least you should, be able to have a conversation for no cost, no obligation with any advisor to begin answering some of these questions. And you want to ask these questions, and I know this might sound obvious, but you want to get answers. So many people, and we've seen this and heard this so many times, unfortunately, they talk to an advisor and they can feel overwhelmed, I know, by the process, or maybe the better word is intimidated by the process. If you are not getting answers in the way that you feel you need them, you either keep asking questions or you continue. You change this resource. We believe that a good advisor is a teacher, and you have to be able to explain these things in ways that make sure that people understand them in the way that they need to understand them. So ask your questions, and do not settle for high level answers or answers that are not suited to your questions. And finally, the last thing, real quick, is financial planning, and particularly retirement planning, is not just about numbers. The emotional aspect of retirement is something that far too few people consider. And the difference in your lifestyle, the difference in in your relationships, your social networks, which can be so tied to your work for so long. Too many people don't consider that as part of the planning process. So you can't just retire from something. You have to retire to something. Doesn't have to be another job necessarily, but it's to continue that purpose. So anyway, those are just a couple of thoughts that we talk about all the time, but I think are important in any time frame.
Fantastic. Well, in closing, how do people reach you? What's the best way to learn more?
Absolutely. Well, of course, our website's just straightline.com, and our number 877-338-4032. And you can email us at info@straightline.com also. But yes, if we can be helpful in any way, we'd love to speak with you.
All right. Mike Bisaro, thank you for being here, and thank you to the City Biz audience for tuning in.
Thank you very much, Marie. Really appreciate it today.